Good afternoon. Welcome back to our FinTech Fusion stage by Krungsri and Visa for the afternoon panels. So this sessions we will focus on opportunities and challenges in CLMV. So first let me ask, is there anyone here from Cambodia? Myanmar? Laos? Oh, Vietnam. Okay, so you're all Thai or from beyond that. Okay, so basically this is 4 countries that we're gonna talk and focus on this afternoon. As you know that with the flings of so many things like natural resources, man works, and their their determinations of they want to improve themselves, but there's so many challenges and weakness that we still have to concern, like politics, regulations, and so many things. But that's become, that make these 4 countries become an opportunities for a new space of businessmen to go there and, get a big money. That's a challenge I mentioned in overall industry. But in terms of fintech, that's even more challenges. So today, we're going to focus on the fintech landscapes, about the opportunities and challenges in the CLMV. And I would like to invite first Mr. Warachat Raksanarod, Head of Consumers, Digital Solutions and Payment Strategies at Bank of ATR or Krungsri Bank. Give him a big hand. And the next one, Mr. Francois Ribosek, Head of Digital Deployment and Solutions, Southeast Asia at Visa. And of course, our wonderful moderator, Mr. Mike Ducker, at Directors of Tiger at Mekong, being a moderator for this panel.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Club FinTech. If you want to dance, I guess you can get up and dance, and because the music and the lights. Hi, everyone. It'll be an exciting conversation. We'll do about 25 minutes, and then we'll go to the audience and do about 5 minutes of Q&A. Of course, when I got this panel, I'm like, cool, I'm going to talk to some young, hip startups, and I'm talking to Visa, which is, I think, about 70 years old, and one of the oldest banks in Thailand. And I'm wondering, what are you guys doing here? Why are we in a fintech panel together? I thought you guys are like old tech or old finance. What are you guys doing here? Tell me, please.
Okay, I start maybe. Yeah. So hi everyone. I think you probably missed the session this morning, which is why you think we're still this old company. And so yeah, we started about 60 years ago. And when Visa started, actually, it's a fascinating story, actually. But as Visa started, we were like a bank association. Started from the US and then expanded globally. And I would say, like, for the longest time, we've actually been a bank association until maybe like less than 10 years ago. There's been a shift operating in the last few years, and we've been talking about it this morning, where we're more now like focusing on the technology side and making sure basically we are opening our network, so as many of you, banks and also non-banks, can actually access the capabilities that we have and launch successful financial products, right? So the way we're doing this, and the big shift is when we opened our platform and launched this Visa Developer Platform. So all of you can now access this platform where our APIs are available and launch products. And the second thing is like the way we engage with partners, so like with our clients, so banks, but also startups, non-financial institutions, through engagement through our innovation lab, for instance. So this is a place where we co-create the experience of the future together with you. And this is also a place where if you have like a cool product that can make a difference, that can really help us in the market, a product, for instance, that solves for like online KYC, credit scoring, or some other things. This is also an opportunity where we can basically showcase your product to our clients and help you launch in market. So yeah, we've been around for a long time, but really our approach has been evolving over time. So.
And Dio?
Yes, สวัสดีนะครับก็ actually for bank Krungsri is a pretty old bank. We are like more than 70 years old in Thailand. We've been gone through a lot of acquisition, and we grown. Right now, we are number one in consumer finance in Thailand, also in auto business. In terms of bank, we are number 5th. I think to answer your question why we are in FinTech, I think FinTech or the financial technology and the bank is not the new things. I've been working in banks for more than 15 years, and we are working with all the FinTech companies for so long, but previously they are not calling themselves a FinTech. They are more or less like a vendor wearing a suit. But right now they are coming in as a different name as a FinTech, wearing a t-shirt and some cool slogan. But actually the concept is still the same. So I think the banking business is always the same. We are doing like moving money from one place to another place. We're providing the services for the business who want to, having some efficiency on doing some cash management, handling their cash or processing their transaction. But when times evolve and technologies evolve and the customer behavior change, you need some technology to help them. That is all. And I think recently there's a lot of changes in the industry that not just only the bigger name that doing the technology for the financial product, but we're starting to notice that a lot of smaller company, some of the ex-banker who left the bank and formed their own business, to develop some of the product. And also some of the very small startup that, having some vision that one day they want to be like a largest corporate who providing the financial services that come into the play. So as a bank, we have to change ourselves. We have to evolve ourselves. So previously, we talked to only the large consultant firm or some of the large technology firm. But now we have to, realize and accept that there's a lot of new ideas from the younger generation, the new generation, that they have a cool idea. Sometimes those ideas is not, crystallized yet, but it's interesting one. So there are two things for the role as a bank. One thing, we hope them, grow them, and hopefully one day they will become our customer. And another area is that we're working with them, we partner with them, and then we use the solution to help we accelerate our bank as well. So that is the role into play for the Krungsri. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We're here to talk about the Mekong region, specifically Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Besides Vietnam, a lot of these countries are fairly small, haven't been very open, especially in Myanmar's case, until very recently. Why do you want to go into these markets? It seems like it's hard work, a lot of education that has to be done at the consumer level. Why do you want to enter these 4 specific country markets?
So I think to start first from what we're seeing in those markets, you say Myanmar just opened up, but we've had business in Vietnam and Cambodia for quite a bit now. And those are markets where we see they are amongst the markets where we see the highest growth in the region. So we're talking about 30-40% growth in market like Cambodia and Vietnam. But the base is still very low. So we still see there is like a huge untapped opportunity. And we see a few challenges in those markets. And I would say the number one challenge is how can we actually expand access? How can we give access to electronic payment to more merchants, to more consumers? And as with the digital evolution, we actually see a big opportunity for those markets to leapfrog to where they are now and go direct to digital, right? So just to give you a couple of examples, we see, for instance, like let me give you one metric which I think is talking a lot. So we know there is an inflection point in any market where electronic payment really start to actually pick up. And this inflection point in terms of merchant acceptance is when you have about 10,000 acceptance points for a population of 1 million. Okay, so in a developed market like the European markets, for instance, you would have like about 20,000 acceptance points for 1 million inhabitants. In Singapore, you would have about 15,000. In Vietnam, you have about 2,000. In Cambodia, about 500, right? So with QR code technology now, we see a great way to basically expand very quickly the acceptance and reach that critical point at a very low cost, right? Because a QR code sticker or like a standee is a lot cheaper, obviously, than a $300 or $400 terminal. So with this new technology that are coming, we see there is suddenly like a huge opportunity to leapfrog and develop those markets very quickly.
Dio, why are you guys going after these markets?
Well, I'll talk into two perspectives. Then one thing, as a bank, I think we have to go there. No question asked, because two things. One thing, we have to support our Thai corporate, Thai customer that want to expand their business into those countries. So of course, as a bank, we have to set up our presence in those countries to at least support our customer. So we have set up several business in those actually all four countries. We have acquired somebody non-bank in Cambodia. We set up our representative office in Myanmar, in Yangon, and also in Vietnam as well, and also in Laos, where we run the consumer finance and auto business. So as a bank, I think there's no doubt in the opportunity in those all four countries. You can just check out some of the economics number. Let's just talk about like GDP. You never see any GDP number that at that high level in other region. Like for example, Cambodia might have up to 7.5% on the GDP comparing to other countries. I think China is like on the negative side already because they're like mature market. So you can see there's a huge opportunity in all those countries. And that is only one perspective on the economic numbers. And secondly, you can see some of the urbanization that's changing in those countries, meaning that more opportunity that coming in. And number three, there's still lack of the infrastructure. When I'm talking about infrastructure, it doesn't mean like just only road or like an expressway or airport, but it's about infrastructure to doing business. Some of the example is that actually 3 out of that 4 countries still cannot do the fund transfer between banks. That is one example that create the opportunity for either banks or FinTech. And there's still a lots of financial transaction or financial services that not available in those countries. And those, maybe the people in that country, they don't even notice that they need those kind of service. But if that service pops up in their country, it's become a big hit. I think there's a lot of development in the FinTech, especially in Cambodia and in Myanmar. I just recently visited both countries in the last 3 months, and I saw a huge development in terms of FinTech product and services in Myanmar, like QR code that François mentioned, like bill payment services, mobile top-up, fund transfer. And it's a combination of like an online and offline, because when you talk about those countries, actually in some part of Thailand also the same, you cannot do pure digital product. You still need a brick and mortar model, but like in a low cost brick and mortar, in order to serve the customer to do the digital transaction. And if you talk about the infrastructure, like there's a lot of opportunity, especially on doing the process digitization. I'm giving you one of the examples of our actually lots of lending business in Cambodia and also in Myanmar, as both countries are the same. When they do the lending product, actually they are all collateral based, meaning that the customer will have to bring in some of their land certificates, or they have to do the site visit to checking on their home in order to get a car loan or a personal loan or even a credit card. So just imagine that if you can developing something to help those banks or financial institutions to do all the process digitization on that part, it's going to be a huge business, because that one never exists in those countries before. So for Krung Si, like I said, we do 2 things. So one thing, we expand our business to those countries. And second thing, we also seek out for somebody, a partner, to help us grow our business in those countries in a more effective way. Yeah.
Francois, of those countries, is there one that really excites you about the opportunity? Is there, maybe that you see real excitement, or maybe you have a story from one of those countries where you see is a great example of how that demonstrates the opportunity in these countries?
Yeah, so we're doing in those 4 countries, we're doing a lot of work in Vietnam and in Cambodia right now. I just mentioned QR code, so I think it was announced in the press a couple of months ago already, but we will be launching M-Visa in Vietnam and in Cambodia in the next few months. And so we're working with quite a number of banks, and also I think where it's becoming interesting is like not just banks but also non-financial institutions to launch M-Visa. And I think this is super exciting, because this is really going to be a big revolution in those markets where it's taken a lot of time traditionally to give more cards to consumers, more terminals to merchants. Then suddenly with this kind of technology, we can go a lot faster, deploying QR code and deploying digital cards to consumers. So in a way, those markets are going to become at the forefront, if you wish, of innovation in the region, right? So I talked about the merchant side like sort of 2 minutes ago, but on the same side, we need to be able to expand access to financial products to consumers, right? And that's where it's becoming interesting because, like as Matthew mentioned this morning, you don't need a plastic card anymore now to do Visa transaction. All you need is like to apply, online, and the Visa number can come to you on your mobile, and then you can use that number to pay either through Samsung Pay, like we're doing in Thailand, or through M-Visa, like we're going to be able to do in Vietnam and Cambodia. Yeah. But there are a few things to solve in the way, and that's where actually FinTech can help us as well. Like those products are not going to be launched by Visa; they're going to be launched by Visa partners. So like banks, non-FIs, like I mentioned, and those partners will need a few things, right? They will need mobile apps. They will need maybe electronic KYC solution, risk scoring solution. They will need to upgrade the host platform to be able to connect to our APIs. And I think that's where actually the FinTech community can help us actually expand those capabilities in the markets. So if you're a FinTech and you're looking at those markets, this is really how you should be looking at it right now.
Do you have also suggestions? There's probably a lot of FinTech startups here in the room. How can they work with a bank in these markets and partner with you and leverage sort of your capability and strengths?
I think like I just mentioned, if just only talking about on the CLMV country only, there's a huge opportunity for banks and for fintechs. Because when you go into those markets and if you really visit there and see with your own eye, you will see that there's a huge opportunity in those countries. And especially if you build something on the infrastructure side, like eKYC that Francois mentioned, e-documents, e-signature kind of thing, and also like doing the switching for the fund transfer, bill payment, and all those basic things, but doing it as a centralized service. That is one thing that I believe that the regulator in those countries are looking for the solution as well. But they cannot work with the particular bank, so they have to work with the fintechs to help them develop some of those capabilities. Some other area for the Krungsri as a bank, we set up our own subsidiary called Krungsri Finovate. So the Krungsri Finovate is the subsidiary company under the bank that running the venture capital. So we do invest in the fintech that we find that the solution is fit into our business direction, and also help us accelerate some of our business and help us expand our banking services. And also we also have the accelerator program called Krungsri Rai Accelerator, so where we recruit the 10 or up to 12 fintech in Thailand to work with us, and then we will help out, groom them, and send out some of our executive team to help them develop their business model, shape up their solution or idea to be able to ready to launch. So those two programs is working, side by side. So one thing, if you see our approach is that we have the company that groom the fintech, help them, and see the opportunity in them, and shape them into a better solution, and then also we invest in them. And another area is that as a bank, we do use those solutions within our bank and expand those solutions into some other country. So this is a good platform and a combination of the venture capital accelerator program and the bank together to help the fintech community to grow in this market.
Great. Francois, is Visa doing anything specifically with sort of fintech startups in the region at all?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of things with the fintech. I think I just mentioned a couple of examples, but maybe we can zoom in. So, like I said, we're going to be launching this kind of technology, M-Visa, with banks, but also non-banks. So I think that's interesting because that's a bit of a shift, right? And the way we and so that includes like a mobile money provider, messenger service, and other kind of services. So it's quite broad actually. And the way we engage with them is both on the technical side, so giving them access to our technology through the Visa developer platforms, through our APIs, is co-create the user experience together, and that through an engagement like through the innovation lab that we have. And it's also by giving them access to the network on the, commercially, right? By making introductions to banks in market that can basically help them connect to the network and launch those products, right? So that's how we kind of collaborate with the fintech in the region. I can't be more specific with names because like those projects are about to launch and they're still a bit confidential. But basically that's what we do. And I think other kinds of
we won't tell anybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. It will stay within this room, I'm sure. But, and I think other kinds of collaboration is like sometimes we see we don't have the technology to solve a particular problem. I just mentioned electronic KYC, for instance. We're not an electronic KYC company, and banks don't have that technology, as an example, right? So that's where we basically go to the market and identify a few players, different solutions, try and understand them, screen them, sort of like make sure that they are good products. And if they're good, then that's when we make introductions to our clients for our clients to consume those technology, right? So those are the different type of engagement. And I don't know if you want to talk about it, but this is also something we've been working on together in Thailand, for instance, and that we're also doing in those markets.
Maybe I should just add more from Fong Suo. I think just not specific on our project that we're working in this approach, but just take a look in some of the customer journey on some product. For example, like personal loan. I think when we talk about the financial technology in the market, I think you all know that the one that really making money is lending and insurance. While payment, you only get the data, and then hopefully you can sell the data one day in the future. But actually, the one that really making money is loans. So let's just give some example on loans. So talk about the customer journey on the loans. So you start by asking the customer to fill in some documents. You capture the documents, then you process. You go into the underwriting, then you capture the document into some kind of file. And then after that, you get into the data, you process the data, you approve the loan, you get the money, you transfer the money to them, and then you start to collect the money back. Just only this journey, maybe we need like more than 10 technology to help solve the problems, right? So if you are a fintech company, just think about it. If you can help all the banks in all those 4 countries to capture all the documents from the customer in the remote area, that's going to be the huge business already. That is one thing. Second thing, since they still don't have, like in Thailand, you have the National Credit Bureau. In other countries, sometimes they still don't have the National Credit Bureau. How are they going to come up with a good credit scoring? So if you are a data company, why don't you think about that? That is the second one. So once you do the underwriting, you do the e-document, e-signature, you keep all those documents into the digital form. That one is also still need another technology there. And actually the key part of the lending product is the collection. It is very easy to lend the money to the people, to the customer, right? But the key thing that your company is going to survive is collecting the money back. So how are you going to build the solution or the platform to help doing the money collection, especially in the remote area? So if you visit Cambodia or Myanmar, I think a lot of people talking about like P2P lending. The very first question as a banker that's going to ask fintech is that how are you going to collect the money back when you lend them through the digital channel? So that is also another equation that if you can solve it, it's going to be also a very big business opportunity for fintech as well. That would be my thought around.
Dio, I remember talking to I think it was a deputy governor of the central bank in Myanmar, and he would laugh at what you're saying because it's a very collateralized real estate lending program in Myanmar. And not only do you need to change the regulations, you need to change the culture of the banks and the people doing the underwriting to get into what you're doing. What have you guys seen as far as sort of pathway in the regulatory part to get to what you're describing? Because I think you're right, there's opportunity there, and I think there's best practice in how to do that. But the regulators and the policymakers are sort of in the way. How do you get to a point where we can get startups into fighting those battles and not worrying about the regulations preventing them?
I don't know about Myanmar, but I do know about Cambodia because recently I just seeing some of the research and also talked to the regulator over there, and they have a very good mindset. I think actually they're making fun of me, but actually what they said is that they're going to let the fintech do first and regulate later. So that is a good thing.
Oh, no,
right?
no, you weren't talking to a government person, were you? No way.
But the thing is that I think in Cambodia, they are the very first country in all those four that come up with the financial strategy roadmap for 2016 up to 2020. In Thai, it's like we have like a roadmap for our financial sector. The good thing is that they already identify in which area from the National Bank of Cambodia, in which area that they want to grow, and which area that they are going to allow the financial company, either you are FinTech or you are a bank that can operate in Cambodia. And I think for Thai, I don't know about foreigner, but for Thai, our perspective towards Cambodia and Myanmar might be different. We might thought that Myanmar is more friendly for the investment, for the developing some new things, but actually Cambodia is more friendly in terms of tax relief, in terms of support from the central bank. So in my perspective, I think Cambodia is quite interesting in there, and you can see some of the successful example like Wings in Cambodia. They are actually even bigger than banks. Actually, they only do the fund transfer and mobile top-ups, and we can see a lots of business growing up in Cambodia in terms of FinTech, especially on the fund transfer business. Yeah.
Francois, do you want to take the regulation question at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, no, I think it's very interesting because, like, regulators want, at the end of the day, they want electronic payment to, to accelerate because it's good for them as well. And at the same time, they want to ensure that those products are secure, right? And actually, we share exactly that same view at Visa. We've seen an acceleration of actually I think regulators are opening up. Yeah. Yesterday there was in the presentation from MAS from Singapore, and you see how they are availing an API platform, how they are building like a KYC portal so that consumer can more easily do that process in Singapore. And so obviously Singapore is a bit ahead, but we see also like in Indonesia, in Thailand, some good progress. Like recently in Thailand, for instance, Bank of Thailand standardized the QR code together with us, MasterCard and China UnionPay. They are opening up to online KYC now, and I think to go back to the countries where we operate, like in Cambodia, we've also seen the Cambodia regulator opening up a regulatory sandbox earlier this year, which means that really they are heading in the right direction, and so we're very excited about this actually.
All right, I'm tired talking. Let's and we have a packed house. Anybody have any questions for these gentlemen? Right here up front.
Hello, my name is Adrian, and I'm based in New York City. And, well, you guys, Visa, you're an American company. And historically, American companies are not very aggressive in Asia in terms compared to your Chinese counterparts. So what are you going to do for when you think Alipay, WeChat, not just to eat you alive as Visa goes? Because those guys are hyper-aggressive, and people in the States are not right now.
But no difficult questions, okay?
Yeah, I can make joke of that. Yeah. No, I think I just responded earlier. I think Alipay, WeChat, they have like a great user experience, right? And they've been very successful in China. And we can see basically how they grab market share and how people love their product. It's very simple, low value payment. You scan a QR code, you pay. And so one of the many responses, is like I say, what we're doing is introducing products like M-Visa in those markets, where basically the consumer experience is actually very, very similar, right? If you think, so you're talking about we are an American company, and that's probably true that historically, like a lot of products are being developed from the US and then come to Asia, and then they work or they don't work. But in the case of M-Visa, for instance, that's a product that was developed in Asia, in India actually, to be specific, and that was launched first in India, not in the US. So I think that's another shift you see, like in our culture, where development don't just happen in the US, but also like is starting to happen in Asia now. And also by making those all those APIs available, it's not just us developing products anymore. It's you actually. So it's like the fintechs, the banks, the community in Asia who are developing their own product to compete also with Alipay and others based on our rails. So this is, in short, this is really how we're responding to this. Yeah.
what's the value add for different commerce and platforms of using Visa versus Alipay? What's the value add that you guys are going to be giving?
Well, I think no difficult question.
No
right?
more loaded questions.
So I mean, we're a global network.
You need my help?
It's okay. I'll take this one. But yeah, actually, like if you want to step in, please. But I mean, we've been in business for 60 years. We've built very strong relationship with about 21,000, banks and non-banks that connects to us, right? So we bring like a global network and global interoperability, a strong brand. So we bring all this, right? I think that's our main asset. It's like a strong processing platform, and like I say, now like a platform that can be accessed by any of you in the region.
Other questions? Back there?
It's not working. Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. All right. I'm from the Bank of Thailand. Well, I'm glad that you
I will be careful now.
the progress. Right. I want to hear more about the challenges that both of you face entering the CLMV, and so that the fintech companies and people who are interested in entering those countries will benefit from this question as well. Thank you.
45 seconds each. Go.
All good. Everything is all good. Actually, I think recently there's a lot of good support and response from actually not just only Bank of Thailand, but also the Central Bank of Cambodia as well. I think the central bank of each country, they start to realize that they cannot just regulate, but they have to help support and bring in people, especially the fintech, to do the right thing. Not just let them do in their own way, and eventually it's going to be messed up. But for the bank, it is the good thing is that when we having like open conversation with the regulator, especially with the Bank of Thailand, the fintech team, they're very open conversation between the banks and the central bank like never before. The good thing is that we can develop the new things. We can bring in the good ideas that actually previously, like 5 years ago, we cannot even mention it. But now we can just open the discussion with the regulator, and then we're starting to see some of the new technology that's going to launch in Thailand and in CLMV country that based on those conversations. And just to add up from Fong Sua, the QR code that you asking about Alipay is like the one to the rest of the world. Because I think the model that we are working together with actually not just Visa, MasterCard, and Union Pay, and in the future JCB and Amex, is that all the banks will use this platform against Alipay. They're just only for the Chinese people. Yeah.
Because we're the finance room, we have to be on time because we have to be a bit more professional. But some of the
add
lessons
up on the regulation to the Bank of Thailand.
But so our time is up. But just some things that I've learned from this incredible panel here from Do and Francois. Cambodia. This is the third or fourth time I've heard about this country. If you want to be in the region, you want to find a place that you can do fintech business, Cambodia is it. I've also heard, yes, it's great that China has had these innovators, but that doesn't mean some of the incumbents and older companies are not going to respond. This is what is great about economics and capitalism, is that everyone is going to try to do better, and it's going to create a better experience and product for the consumers, and it creates opportunity for collaboration with fintech startups out there that want to do business. Here's two important people. Get your business cards out. You want to say hi to him. Thank them very much for coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to have Mr. Warachat Rakkanarod.
Wow, we have a full house here. So we have a few more seats if you want to come in, so new guys can come in later. Oh, thank you, Kunbo, for the introduction. I just need a quick show of hands. How many of you have heard of Bitcoins before? Wow, that's great. How many have Bitcoins? Even better. Hello, everyone. My name is Top. I co-founded coins.co.th, Thailand's leading Bitcoin wallet, about 3 years ago. And I was its managing director up until the end of last year. So today we're going to look at Bitcoin from the other dimension. We will look at Bitcoin from the elegant side of this disruptive technology, right? We will look at it from this perspective of the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. We will not look at this Bitcoin technology from a normal user perspective that only reads press headline. These entrepreneurs recognize innovations not just a few months, not just a few years, but usually a decade before everyone else does. They were the ones pushing the world's technology frontier forward. But if you look back in history, people always laughed at them at the start. Cars. Do you know what the media says about automobile when it first came out? They mocked cars. Cars were slower than horses. Cars broke down all the time. Cars use expensive gasoline that you cannot find anywhere. And they required enormous infrastructure to work. So the media focused on parts of the story that they can solve the most papers. Car accidents. People ran over by cars. For more than 2 decades from the first car was invented, the story was one of those disgusting, noisy, dirty machines that could not go anywhere. They were slower than horses, broke down all the time, and most of the time killed the occupants or anyone who came anywhere near them. The story got so bad that in 1896, the UK government came out with a new law called the Red Flag Act. The Red Flag Act requires anyone who wants to use a car to have at least 3 crew members: the driver, the engineer, and the guy with a red flag. Right? The driver would drive the car, the engineer would sit with the driver to supervise the engine, and the guy with the red flag would run 100 yards ahead of the car and tell everyone that the death machine is arriving and it's going to run them over. Guess what happened to the UK? They completely lost the automobile industry race. So they see the technology, but instead of seeing the potential, they allow fear to define their reaction. In other words, they created an environment where a car cannot do the thing the car can do. If you force a car to run slower than the guy with the red flag, you might as well go back and ride horses, right? So the government tries to take the car and understand it from the perspective of railroads and horses, and they failed. This happens again and again in technology. Electricity. Do you think when the electricity first being used, do you think people say, wow, this technology is going to change the world? Nope. They said that this is a dangerous technology. It would burn down people's home. It would kill people. So they ran stories after stories about people getting killed, about homes burning down. This happened again and again in technology, just like those people who said that the telephone would never succeed. Remember back in the days when the telephone was the size of a refrigerator? Guess what happened to what people said about Bitcoin? They said that Bitcoin is a technology for weird and complicated, right? Technologies for drug dealers, criminals, terrorists. Again, those people are wrong. Bitcoin is none of those things. Bitcoin is a neutral technology. And as with any disruptive technology, it was always adopted by criminals first. Why do criminals use this technology this way? Criminals use the most cutting-edge technology because they operate in a very high profit margin and very high risk. And in that space, competition is fierce. So they have to adopt the latest technology in order to win. The most amazing technology throughout history were adopted by criminals first. The first car was used as a getaway vehicle. The first telephone was used to plot conspiracy. These new things always happen with new technology. And it happened with Bitcoin, too. But Bitcoin has already gone past that early stage. It is no longer for the criminals. Bitcoin is now hitting the mainstream. And it is going to change the world to the same level of the impact that the car has or the electricity has on our economy, on our society. So what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoin is actually a breakthrough in computer science that builds on 20 years of research into cryptographic currency and 40 years of research into cryptography by thousands of researchers around the world. How do you establish trust between unrelated parties over an untrusted network like the internet? Bitcoin gives us, for the first time, a way for one internet user to transfer a unique piece of digital property over to another internet user, such that the transaction is guaranteed to be safe and secure. Everyone can see that this transaction has taken place, and nobody can challenge the legitimacy of that transaction. This implication alone is massive. What kinds of digital property might be transferred this way? Think about digital contracts, digital keys, digital stocks and bonds, and digital money. The Bitcoin ledger is a new payment system. You can you can send money to anyone by transferring the ownership of the corresponding slot in the ledger. We call this ledger the blockchain. Bitcoin allows transaction to happen at a very low cost. As existing payment infrastructure charge fees of around 2 to 3%, and that's in the developed world. In lots of other places where the payment infrastructure is poor, the fees are much higher, but we'll come back to that. So why is Bitcoin so disruptive? Let me tell you based on my personal experience. Before I founded Coins about 4 years ago, I had to transfer money to my sister in England, in the UK. So I decided to use Bitcoin instead of the traditional international wire transfer. And guess how long it took me before my sister received the cash? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. It's not just that. I also made an extra 5% profit on that transaction. An extra 5% more money. It was never ever possible in the history of humanity that when you're doing an international transfer and you ended up with more money. If I were to use banks that day, I would have lost 5% of my money because I had to pay for two things, right? The transaction fee and the exchange rate. It would have been a lot worse if I decided to use Western Union. To transfer money from Thailand to the UK would have cost me 10%, 9-point-something%, right, from Thailand to the UK. And it would take a few weeks before my sister received the cash. You know that feeling when you're first exposed to cars? You're not going to go back and ride horses again. That feeling when you're first exposed to emails. You're not going to go back and write letters to friends again, right? That feeling when you're exposed to Skype. Are you going to go back and pay for international phone calls? That exact feeling, I was like, wow, I would never go back and use traditional banks again for international transfer. Bitcoin is very disruptive. Remittance. Every day, an immigrant worker somewhere cashes out his paychecks, stands in line to wire 50% of his paychecks back to his home country to feed an extended family. $515 billion are being transferred every year from the first world countries to 5 major destinations: China, India, Philippines, Mexico, and Indonesia. And in these economies, remittance takes around 20 to 30% of their economy. That is a big value. And sitting on top of that, there's this one company called Western Union, taking a cut of around 10 to 15% on every single one of those transactions out of the pockets of the poorest people in the world. Now imagine if that immigrant could figure out that he could do exactly the same thing with Bitcoin, but not for 15%, not for 10%, not for 5%, but for 5 cents. What do you think is going to happen? Because he can do that right now. All he needs is a mobile phone that is connected to the internet to use Bitcoin as a means of international transfer. To receive $100 a month instead of $80 a month, that's a big difference for these people. In fact, I can't think of anything else that has a faster and greater impact to the world's poorest people right now. Micropayment has never been feasible in the past. This is because it is not cost-effective to wire small payments with our current existing payment system. You can never transfer 20 baht from Thailand to Africa because the transaction fees is already much higher. Guess what, guys? Bitcoin allows micropayments to happen for the first time in the history of humanity. Bitcoin has the property of the infinite divisibility currently down to 8 decimal points, meaning you don't have to buy 1 Bitcoin. You can buy 0.000001 Bitcoin. And you can transfer these millibits to anyone, anywhere in the world, for a very low cost. Even with my former company, you can send 10 baht to Africa with a matter of 1 single text message. You don't have to go to the bank, stand in the line, fill out all the form, and tell the receiver that, oh, by the way, you will lose 10% of your cash. Oh, by the way, you would have to wait a few weeks before you get your cash. From now, sending 10 baht to Africa is going to be as easy as logging in onto your Facebook account at home in your couch. And that is what I call revolutionary. Unbanked. 2.5 billion people in the world are currently unbanked. Only around 20 countries are considered to have a proper international banking and payment system. The other 175 countries still have a long way to go. As a result, many people in many countries are currently excluded from international banking. How many of you guys have heard of a company called M-Pesa? What about, everyone knows Apple Pay, right? Apple Pay is cool, but it's nowhere near as cool as M-Pesa. This M-Pesa company, just one company, accounts for 30% of Kenya's GDP. People in Kenya don't have access to banking services. M-Pesa turns a simple text messaging phone into a banking facility for the poor. Guess what, guys? M-Pesa already accepted Bitcoins. What do you think? Think carefully. What do you think is going to happen when 2.5 extra billion people can now join the global economy? Bitcoin brings financial inclusion to the rest of the world. Bitcoin creates an unprecedented new pool of labor force. What do we mean by that? Well, people in Thailand who doesn't have a bank account, people in Africa, can now do contract works, can now do the freelance work for the companies in the West. And they can get paid in Bitcoin for the first time in history. 2.5 extra billion people in the world can now join the global workforce. Think of the impact on the world's production frontier. There'll be loads more goods and services available. So Bitcoin is not about the 1 billion people who have, it's about the other 6.5 billion people who are currently cut off from the international banking. But the 1% like us, the top 1% like us, can also benefit from Bitcoin. Right now we pay around 2 to 3% to credit card companies. This creates more friction to commerce. If you're making around 6% selling stuff online, and you're paying 3% for credit card processing fees, you have given away half of your profit. You also have to face the risk of credit card fraud and chargeback risk. Giving away 3% to banks to move bits around the internet is the worst possible choice. That money could be reinvested in your company. Another issue that merchants have with payment is accepting international payments. If you're wondering why some of your favorite products or services are not available in your country, the answer is often payments. Guess what, guys? Bitcoin solved all these problems. First, merchants no longer have to pay 3%. They can pay 0% because Bitcoin is decentralized, right? Second, there's no chargeback risk because payments in Bitcoin are not reversible. Third, there's no credit card fraud risk because you're not giving away your information when you transact with Bitcoin. And of course, there won't be any issues accepting international payments because everyone is now on the same global payment network. This year, mobile payments will reach $117 billion. That's around 3% of global transactions. Right there with Bitcoin, the world can be better off by 3%. At a global scale, that is a big value. That's why big companies like Wikipedia, Expedia, Dell, Microsoft, Overstocks, Japan, Australia, South Korea, and many more already accepted Bitcoin. Content monetization. One reason that media businesses, such as newspapers, struggle to charge for content is because they force us to either pay for all, the full subscription fee, and we can read all the content, or you pay nothing, but it results in all those terrible banner ads everywhere on the web. There are no middle ground. What if I want to read this one particular article or watch this particular video clip? All of a sudden, with Bitcoin, there is an economically possible way to charge arbitrarily small amount of money per article, per section, per video play. You cannot do that with today's payment system. Credit cards were made in the 1950s, and they were most certainly not made for the internet age. Bitcoin is made for the internet age. So suddenly, if you can make payments that are fractions of a penny, you can start to sell content. You can do microtransactions. You can collect payments from millions of people in tiny amounts to make, in aggregate, something meaningful. Another potential use of Bitcoin micropayments is to fight spam. Future email systems or social networks can refuse to accept incoming messages unless they were accompanied with tiny amount of Bitcoins. Tiny enough not to matter to the sender, but large enough to deter spammers, who today can send countless billions of spam emails for free with impunity. Another great Bitcoin use case example is donation. A few years ago, a random spectator at a televised sport event held up a sign with a QR code and a text, "Send me Bitcoin." He received $25,000 within the first 24 hours, all from people he had never met. This is the first time in history that you could see someone holding up a sign, whether on TV or in person or in a photo, and you can send them payments with 2 clicks on your smartphone. Take a photo of the QR code on the sign and click send the payment. Think of the implication. When there is an earthquake in Japan, for example, and you want to help out, refugees or people that needed help can receive your cash instantly without having to go through all the intermediary middleman in the process. Right now, there are 193 currencies, and there's only one international currency. There are 193 currencies that are controlled by governments and central banks, and there is one mathematical currency, and that is Bitcoin. And we are going to build more of those. Cryptographic currencies are going to be part of the future of this planet because they have been invented. You cannot uninvent that technology. You cannot take that omelette back into egg. Right now, there are over 800 digital currencies. This shows how innovation has quickly exploded using decentralized consensus technology. So guys, to sum up, Bitcoin is the most exciting technology I have ever seen. Bitcoin is perfect money for the internet. It is instant, it is safe, it is free, and it is going to change the financial industry. That's it from me, guys. Thank you for listening.
I always wonder, is this Satoshi, is the founder's exit? Okay, you can answer me after this. Okay, so thank you so much, Kapitov, Mr.
Good afternoon. We're losing some people, but that's okay, because after the last session, I think I'm losing my job, right? There's nothing left for me to do when it comes to, but in all seriousness, there's quite a bit that we are doing that I'd like to share with you today, especially as it comes to collaboration. A large part of my role is focused on how we collaborate with fintechs and other businesses to really scale some of the solutions that we're trying to bring to the markets. Oh, thanks. So my name is Arvin, as I mentioned. I work in a part of Visa called New Channels, and that's really about that collaboration, engagement, and looking at how we work with businesses that we call payment enablers, new payment enablers. And my colleague Matthew mentioned that earlier today. Francois spoke about it. And what I'd like to do is build on what Francois started saying and give you some real-life examples of case studies that we have where we're live, we've just launched, and we're looking to grow these solutions with the partners that we're working with. So before I jump to the case studies, just two quick slides. One is why. Why does it matter? I think a lot of what we've heard today already talks about why we're doing what we're doing. Customer expectations have shifted, and they've shifted because of these tech giants. What they've done is come in and they've brought solutions to the market that really define what customer experience should look like, and that just redefines what the expectations of a customer looks like. So from our perspective, what we're seeing is we need to deliver now in the financial services industry, in payments, experiences that match or exceed these expectations that have been set. I know that's a pretty daunting task, but hopefully we can utilize the partnerships, the collaboration, and the new technology that we're seeing in order to do just that. So if that's the why of what we're doing, of why we're doing what we're doing, then how are we going to do it? So traditionally, yes, we've made reference to it a few times today that Visa's old. We've been around for a long time, 50, 60 years, debatable as to when we were established and how long we've been doing what we're doing. A lot of how we worked over that 50-year span has been about making solutions. We make it in-house, we build something on top of the network, and we distribute it through our partners, which in essence have been banks. And that's how we've operated for a very, very long time. The evolution of what we need to do as a business and what we've started the journey on, it's cultural, it's just how we work. And that shift is about enabling solutions. Rather than making products, we're enabling solutions. And for us, that's how we're going to be able to deliver those top-class customer experiences. So to get specific, I have 3 short case studies that I'd like to share. I'll spin through them very quickly and take some time at the end to chat with anyone that wants to learn a bit more. The first is what I call scaling access to the network. So we've built this big global network connecting multiple banks. You tap your card against a terminal and it communicates with the bank that issued the card, and there's some form of communication that happens there, which is in essence our network. But how do you get access to that network? How do you become an issuer? How do you put your logo on a Visa card in order to go out there and acquire customers? So you need an access point. And an example of how we've given access is with a partner called Wirecard. Large payments business out of Germany, established, doing lots of very interesting, innovative things in multiple markets in Europe, and typically has been a payment processing business. But recently, if you're in Singapore, you'll start to see point-of-sale terminals branded with Wirecard's logo. And it's part of their strategy of expanding across Asia-Pacific. So they approached us and said, we're doing some great innovative things across Europe. We're working with a group of fintechs to do digital banking solutions, whether it was a number 26 in the early days, and some of those great companies. How can we get access to Visa's network in Asia Pacific to start launching some of these digital-based solutions? So we said, well, let's go through the process of Wirecard becoming a direct licensed issuer of Visa cards. And that's exactly what happened in Singapore. They were able to get a Visa license, that worked directly with the MAS on identifying any type of regulatory requirements, and set up a card issuing business. It's a very invisible card issuing business at this point. They don't want to be the front-facing brand on the card to deliver those solutions. But what they can provide is access. at scale. So if you're a fintech and you want to launch a digital banking solution in Singapore, and of course they'll look at a few other markets over time, you can approach Wirecard, understand what it takes to work with them, and start building that solution together. We'll be there as part of that guidance, part of the process of getting access and providing some best practice. But really, it's a partnership between a fintech and a company that has access to Visa's network. And for me, that's really how we're going to get scale. They can have a pipeline of 100 different solutions, whether it's a remittance business, somebody holding a remittance license to be able to do that, a digital banking solution, a payroll company, a multi-currency travel card. But we only get involved when it comes to understanding the solution and providing some basic checks and balances to make sure that it's being used for the right reasons. So in essence, what we've seen and have been working on for possibly the last 18 months is directly with Wirecard to help them enable some of these solutions. Like I said, we call them a new payment enabler. And a tangible experience of something that we've launched recently is the Singtel Dash program in Singapore. It's a relaunch of Singtel's digital wallet, and it's worth checking out if you are based in Singapore just to see what the evolution of that product looks like. It's a virtually issued Visa card, directly accessed by your mobile device, and you can basically set it up in a couple minutes and start spending immediately. Excellent. Oh, wow, I'm spinning through. Okay. Example number 2, direct access. So while somebody like a Wirecard can give access at scale, some companies want to directly work with Visa, and they're not a financial services business. So what we saw in the Philippines is part of the telco, Voyager Innovations from the Smart Group. They set up a venture specifically designed around financial services for the group business under the name of Paymaya Philippines. Their focus was specifically on digital payments and how they could build a smartphone-first payments ecosystem. And as part of that, they approached Visa and said, what we'd like to do is use that network access that you could give to us in order to build a digital solution that will reach beyond what current banking capabilities can offer for the mass market in the Philippines. Now, what's the reason why some of these solutions that are in market today may not reach the full mass scale? Well, simple things. Physical locations. You have to actually go into a branch to get access to your first payment product or your first digital payment product. Banking hours are quite tight. You might not be able to make it off of work at the right time to be able to go into a branch. You might not have the right documents required to do face-to-face KYC at that point where you actually make it into the branch. So what they said is, we're going to build a fully digital onboarding process, launch that, get people on board as quickly as possible, and then subsequently provide you with a physical card if you feel that it's required. And yes, in a market like the Philippines, we would need a physical card for a lot of the transactions that are done face-to-face. But at least from an e-commerce standpoint, you're able to immediately get access to this as a solution for ordering something online. So again, it was that process of giving a direct issuing license to Paymaya as a partner to get onto Visa's network to launch this digital solution. And at this point, at least what we can share is 1 million in terms of access granted, the reach that they've had so far since launching, and going out there and going specifically after a segment that's underserved when it comes to digital payment solutions. Excellent. My last example is a bit closer to home. So U2 is a solution here in Thailand that's launched. It's a bit different. So I've talked about scaling access, direct access, and in this example, what I'm looking at is, can we enhance existing solutions with some of our network capabilities? My colleague spoke earlier about Visa Developer Platform and accessing some of our APIs. And this is one of those scenarios where an existing loyalty platform was able to tap into what we've built from a network standpoint to enhance their existing customer experience. So what a user can do is add their Visa card to the U2 solution, and as you start racking up points, I'm up to about 250 right now. When I reach 1,000, I'll be able to convert those points into Thai baht and push them directly from U2's app onto my Visa card. So fairly frictionless experience. I just reach the right caps like you would with any rewards program, but the liquidity and the access that I have, whether it's peer-to-peer and I send those points to a friend, or I want to get it as liquid as possible, convert it to cash, and be able to use that cash again very quickly, I can just push that directly to my Visa card. So these are 3 examples of how we are working directly with a large payments company, in the case of Wirecard, to give access to the network to a variety of fintechs and other companies, whether it's a travel company, a retailer wants to run their own card program. Paymaya to get direct access as part of a telco group to go after an underserved segment of the market when it comes to financial services. And U2 when it comes to enhancing an existing product to add value to a customer, to allow them to create a bit more stickiness within your solution today because you're giving them more access to the money and points that they've earned. The last thing I'll say, and I know I'm cutting it short in terms of timing, but the last thing I wanted to add is that we're open. And when I say that is, for the first time, we have a contact Visa button on the website. And yeah, it's about 18 months old as well, and we get some really interesting requests coming through, but some really great solutions that get passed through as well. And actually, the follow-up that happens from that will be directly with the teams in market or through our team in Singapore to follow up and understand what it is that people are trying to build with Visa's network. Is there a partner I can put them in touch with, whether it's a bank or another non-financial institution that has access to Visa's network? Is there a way to work with us directly? Is there an opportunity to make use of one of our APIs or a few of our APIs to build a better service? How can we collaborate in order to create those solutions where we're actually just an enabler as part of that solution? So that's all I have. If there is something that you're interested in doing with Visa, please just find me after. Let's have a chat or reach out via the website, and I'll be sure to follow up with you directly and learn a bit more about what you're trying to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arvind Singh from Visa, or at Svin. Wow.
How's everyone doing? My name's Chris. I'm on the investment team at a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm. We invest in a lot of deep tech, and my specific focus has been on both blockchain and AI. And primarily today, I'm going to keep it very high level, not get into a lot of the technology underlying a lot of these blockchain platforms and infrastructure being built, but more where's the capital around the world going to being deployed, in what regions, what types of investment vehicles are they, be they platforms, exchanges, infrastructure, even just traditional blockchain startups. Let's get started. So before I get into the specific trends, there's a key term that's kind of been brought up in the recent years known as crypto economics, and it's really the foundation behind investing in blockchain. And I think this quote right here by the Ethereum co-founder and creator sums it up in the most simplest way for someone who hasn't come across the term crypto economics before. And it's basically using cryptography and economic incentives to achieve information security goals. So this acts as the foundation of the blockchain in general for all digital assets. Cryptography is what makes the communication on the network function properly, and at the same time, the economics is what actually incentivizes all active participants to continue using the network into the future. And a little bit more background before I get into the capital side of it. There are a lot of chains being created. The two main chains most of us are familiar with are Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's been buzz around the recent biggest ICO ever behind the Tezos chain. And there's about 10 or so chains now created, like Neo, which is known as like the Ethereum of China. And there's a number of other chains that are being launched around the world, trying to basically improve on infrastructure that Bitcoin or Ethereum are supposedly lacking. So as we all know, Bitcoin is facing massive transaction time issues. So a lot of chains are coming out. They're trying to improve on the smart contracts that Ethereum brought to the game and really build and solve all the problems that the existing chains have right now. And building it from scratch typically can be done much quicker than trying to update an existing chain. And that's kind of what, if you talk to any of these teams building out these new chains, that's why they're doing it. Building up with a new scripting language that hopefully is working much easier for developers to be able to create apps on top of it. That's really the key benefit to these new chains. And on that note, is there going to be one chain to rule them all? That's a popular saying going around, me personally and our firm, we believe there will be multiple chains that will exist in the future. How many chains that is, I don't know. But we have roughly 10 or so chains known around the world right now, only a few of them being launched products already and live and being used. But really, different chains will be used for different purposes. Bitcoin chain, very simple transactions. If you want to purchase something, it's great for that. Ethereum, if you're really looking to develop some specific application utilizing the smart contracts, it makes way more sense. Tezos is kind of a newer version of Ethereum, trying to be able to create rules off of existing rules so that the governing structure, it creates a unique governing mechanism to where you're able to update the chain much more efficiently than the Ethereum chain can be updated right now. And it involves more of the community where there's a majority kind of voting process where a mass consensus must approve updates to the protocols and functions on the chain. So yeah, there's not going to be one chain to rule them all. There will be multiple chains. And I think once you start seeing some of these tokens being developed on top of Bitcoin and Ethereum, as these new chains go live, you'll see some of those applications being developed on top of these new chains because it shouldn't take too long, maybe even a month, if you wanted to take an application on top of Ethereum and then recreate it onto a new chain. So Bitcoin kind of was the start of crypto economics in some sense. Being the first public blockchain. Roughly today, there's about 750 tokens built on top of Bitcoin. But as we all know, with the recent talk about SegWit and BIP91, transaction times are the huge problem there. The number of people that own Bitcoin, the number of users that contribute to the entire market cap now, all these transactions going on, the complexity of the code, the base code, the scripting language it was written in, wasn't created to handle this. The block sizes were too small. So the issue is with the complexity of the code becoming so large with all these transactions going on at the same time, it's taking way too long for someone on the other end to receive Bitcoin for a specific payment. And a lot of people are working on solving this right now, and even there's some money being poured in that sector. And the recent crypto craze has created an infamous picture I think will be in the history books 100 years from now, with the Federal Reserve Chairman of the U.S., Janet Yellen, with this kid in the background saying buy Bitcoin. And he actually showed up his wallet address afterwards and had like 15, if you scan his wallet address, you'd see like $15,000 US were sent to his address. Just because he got on live television behind kind of the one of the main fiat currencies of the world, the person who governs the rules behind it, and he's holding up a buy Bitcoin sign. So, and Bitcoin, you've seen two kind of main peaks. You saw the first peak in 2013, and then you saw a big dip. You saw a lot of skepticism, people pulling out of Bitcoin thinking it was going to die. And then in the last 6 months or so, you've seen this massive rush of capital going back into Bitcoin. It's typically the first thing people think of when they hear the word blockchain. So naturally, a lot of new investors, the non-conventional blockchain investors, when they want to invest in the cryptocurrency craze, the first thing they buy is usually Bitcoin. And that's really what contributed a lot to the craze. And now recently, it'll be interesting to see where it goes with the talk of the hard fork coming August 1st and all that stuff. Ethereum is, yeah, I already talked most about it, but I guess it's the second most used platform where applications are being built on top of it, and so much money has been dumped into it in the last, I don't know, 3-4 months. It's been crazy. It was catching up to Bitcoin's market cap, and if you look at what it never really had an ICO at the time. That wasn't a thing. But when it first was generating its tokens a couple of years ago, it raised about $18 million. And at one point, its market cap was, I think, roughly like $35 billion. It's like $21 billion today. But it's crazy if you think about the return on that and how massively that's grown. Yeah, so you can see the kind of correction for Ethereum. And there's just a big, massive backlog issue right now with Ethereum. I won't get too much into that. But that's really what a combination of the infrastructure issues with Ethereum, as well as people use Ethereum to then buy into altcoins and tokens and the likes. So a lot of the capital from initially going into Ethereum has now been kind of diversified. People are taking profits and spreading it across all these other tokens. Tezos, just pointing out really quickly, largest ICO of all time at 230 million. The largest previous one was 150 million, Bancor's ICO. So it's crazy. 230 million ICO, in my opinion, is way too much. Just like startups, the general rule, you should never raise too much capital. You should raise enough capital to hit your future milestones. I think that applies very, very well to blockchain and cryptocurrencies in general as well. Raising this much money makes no sense, and it really disaligns the incentives of the team and the future of the product. Just real quick, I'm not going to get too much in these tokens, but I just want to share a few tokens that are kind of the primary names you'll hear of if you start looking to deploy capital or invest in these things. So Golem, acting as, people call it the Airbnb for computers. So basically, if you have extra processing power on your computer or your data server, you can rent it out and make money on it. And on the flip side, if you're James Cameron making the next Avatar and you want to, if you want to render you want to do some CGI rendering for your movie, right now it can take up to weeks, say, for James Cameron to render a video. And using the Golem platform, in theory, he could borrow processing power from everyone, from all the different nodes on the blockchain network, and in a matter of seconds, or much quicker than weeks, be able to render these videos on his own personal laptop. And that's kind of what Golem is. Yeah. Siacoin's kind of the flip of Golem if you compare it from processing power to storage. Siacoin's similar if you've heard of storage. Many others fall in that category. The new recently Filecoin is going to be ICOing here soon. Basically, they're trying to be the cloud storage. So if I want to store a document somewhere else and I don't have room for it on my computer, it basically encrypts that document, splits it into 1 million pieces, puts all those different pieces on everyone's computers that are connected to the network, and by breaking it up like that, no individual user on their own computer can look into the file, but me, based on how the algorithms of the network are set up, I can quickly have access to it by piecing the pieces together. Aragon. This one's interesting. It basically allows decentralized organizations to run on Ethereum. So from fundraising, accounting, bylaws, even voting from your cap table, it helps you run all of that if you want to kind of set up a decentralized organization and continue to manage it on Ethereum. Augur's really interesting. Not too many people are familiar with prediction markets. Prediction markets kind of first were coined in like the 90s, but really what Augur's trying to do is create a forecasting tool. So if you want to make specific bets it's not even just bets, but more if you want to crowdsource information to get an answer to a question that you currently can't get answer to today, it kind of gives you the probability of the right answer to your question. So if you want to ask it, will Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, become president of the U.S. in 2020? You then crowdsource everyone on the network. They provide their answer. They maybe get a bit of Augur coins in return. And then at the same time, you'll get the probability based on the general pooling consensus of voting on the likelihood of Dwayne The Rock Johnson becoming U.S. president. And then one last coin I want to talk about, Maker. It's kind of twofold. It has both Maker and DAI, the DAI stablecoin. This is a very interesting, it's almost an experiment right now, in the sense that there are a few kind of, I don't know, insurance-based assets in the world right now. But no, it's really being experimented on, and no one's really sure the best way to, the team that's kind of building it isn't setting up. They don't have a specific vision for how they're going to set it up. They're kind of working as they go. And similar to how Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, the Maker team is trying not to actually have a foundation to run the organization. They want to just create it, have it going, and then no one's governing it, similar to how Bitcoin was set up. And basically, it has collateral that backs the coin. So right now, all cryptocurrencies, as we know, are very volatile. The purpose of this coin is to really stabilize. If you want to put your money in a coin and have minimal volatility and have a very stable kind of collateral, a coin backed by collateral, it over collateralizes the asset roughly 150 to 200% from a few different assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, even gold, and the likes. And then it's able to keep the volatility so low to this coin. Not saying the price won't ever change. The price will still steadily go up or down depending on just the general economy. But you'll have a much more stable way to have a coin that can be used for a number of different purposes. And just talking about token returns, the average on average for the past 12, or the average 12-month token return has been 10x. Which is just absolutely crazy. Stratus has returned over 1,000x since it ICO'd not long ago. Ethereum has returned over 1,000x since it ICO'd. Actually, maybe not now that with the drop, but Bitcoin has returned 60,000x plus since ICO, roughly depending on what cent you're looking at, which is greater than investing, if you're a VC investing in Facebook's seed round. The returns you would have gotten on Bitcoin had you invested in 2009 would have exceeded that. And it's just crazy. And everyone wants a Lambo. So the general consensus on the online community is buy cryptocurrencies and you'll be able to get a Lambo in 3 to 5 years. But yeah, token sales are really unique. A lot of people, when they're investing in tokens, think they're kind of getting equity like you are with stocks. And that's really not how it's working. Think of it more as if you've ever used like Amazon Web Services or something, and they provide you like a paid API key. When you're investing in a token, you're really getting a paid API key that has a specific use case, and that use case and service that paid API key provides is the value that you're kind of getting. And that value can either increase or decrease in the future depending on how successful the platform's set up. But really, token sales have become so massive because of the huge user base and really the time to liquidity. Now I'll go over a few applications. Coinbase is one of the more popular startups in the space. They've raised over $100 million in funding from some prominent US-based investors. They are kind of the go-to for all the noobs that the first time they want to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or even Litecoin now. You just quickly make a Coinbase account and you can go directly from a fiat currency into buying Bitcoin or Ethereum. So it's kind of the first step from going from a fiat to cryptocurrency. Exodus is interesting to me. It's another vehicle. It's more of a really slick-looking user interface, acting as a platform where it has wallets for you to be able to store your coins. And then also it integrates a application called Shapeshift. And Shapeshift basically allows you to exchange one type of token for another, say Golem for Augur or vice versa. And then a little bit into the middleware and services. BlockCypher, that's one of our portfolio companies for my VC. BlockCypher basically has an out-of-the-box solution for developers, almost like a toolkit for developers to easily have blockchain as a service on top of either the Bitcoin or the Ethereum chain. So whatever they need to develop, BlockCypher's kind of built a quick out-of-the-box solution to get going. Zappos, there's a few others out there like Zappos. Zappos basically acts as a debit card backed by Bitcoin, And if you want to purchase things at coffee shops or convenience stores, you just swipe your card and it pulls Bitcoin out of the account, but then the person gets charged, or the person on the other end, the vendor, receives the fiat currency from that. It does the exchange kind of for you. And then infrastructure and platforms, we invested in a company called Blockstream. Blockstream's largely, their main focus right now is fixing the transaction time issue with Bitcoin. So they've created this, they haven't created it, but they've helped build upon the technology called sidechain, which is roughly a decade-old technology. And essentially, on a specific node, they have a peg that connects to the sidechain and allows you to update the infrastructure and the protocols in that sidechain of the Bitcoin chain in general, and then from there, you move it back into the Bitcoin node. So it's similar to how a smart contract works, but it allows you to update the Bitcoin infrastructure without actually having to have a general consensus. So it's kind of on a node by node basis, and then it gets approved in that way. And then just very general trends. Investors are comparing it to the dot-com bubble with so many entrants, very high amount of capital being deployed into it with high valuations, and a lot of shell companies. A lot of companies that, before they even have a product released or have shown any demo of their product, they're raising a $100 million ICO. So it's getting pretty crazy, and really it'll be interesting to see all these thousands of coins now, how many of them will still be around in the next decade. And then just breaking up the capital by region. In the APAC, you can see 40% of all investment in blockchains, both cryptocurrencies and just traditional startups. 40%'s gone into the APAC region, 20% into Europe, 10% into North America, and then 30% in the rest of the world. And then breaking it down more specifically for Bitcoin and blockchain, you can see that the global deal share, the US takes about 56% of that pie. So a big portion of it. And then Singapore, Japan, South Korea, China, and the UK, those are kind of the other big names that fall behind the US. And then the rest of the world is in that other block. And then breaking down the deals by both kind of general funding over the last few years, both capital and number of deals, you can see the upward trend there. In 2015, where you see roughly 500 million raised, that was almost all from non-strategic venture funding. And then you see a huge shift in the 550 million raised in 2016 was practically all strategic capital. So finally, these corporations in 2016 saw the use cases for the blockchain. A lot of banks and a lot of just CVCs in general started pouring money in 2016. So there's a big kind of inflection point there. And then breaking down VC funding from ICOs, you can see in the light blue, the ICO funding has slowly been creeping up more and more to VC funding. And now for the year of 2017 up to this point, there's been 4 times the amount of ICO funding raised than traditional VC funding into blockchain startups, which is just insane in my opinion. And yeah, this kind of expands on that. You can see in the more recent months how much has really been raised from the last three or 4 months, April, May, June, and how it's just going crazy right now. Yeah, and then this is just kind of breaking down that and all that capital based on different sectors. So roughly 35% goes to capital markets and financial services. There's another big portion that goes to wallets and money services. 13% of it is done by cryptocurrencies and exchanges, and then IoT and kind of merchant services make up the rest of that. Let's hope that cryptocurrencies continue to go to the moon. I strongly believe in these, and I really like some of these very unique use cases that are coming out of the blockchain. And I think right now we're at a point, just like we were with the internet in the early 90s, where we didn't quite know how to use it. I think that's kind of where we are now with blockchain, and hopefully over the next decade, the blockchain will be developed into as much of a game changer as the internet was for the world. And lastly, if you have a startup, blockchain or FinTech startup, interested in getting $1 million in funding, I'm running a program around the world where we have startup competitions in 30 different countries. We fly out the winners to Silicon Valley, and then the winners compete for $1 million prize in San Francisco. So if you have any startups, I encourage you to apply. Would love to see your ideas. Thanks, and that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chris, for such.
Hello, everyone. So now we're in the panel session. We're going to be discussing about is blockchain a fintech game changer in this session. So I guess I'll start off with a quick introduction again. So my name is Top. I co-founded coins.co.th, Thailand's leading Bitcoin wallet, about 3 years ago. I'll start from here on. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Savitri Basnat. I'm a senior manager at Deloitte Consulting across Southeast Asia. I'm based in Singapore. And my expertise is in financial services. I work with banks and other financial institutions looking at innovation, operational excellence, and transformation projects.
Hi, my name is Abhishat Arunkunarak, or you can call me Nat. I'm the current executive of the IBM, take care of the strategic accounts in financial services and in banking. I'm based in Thailand.
Hello, Makoto Shibata from Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ. I fly in from Tokyo, and I'm in the digital banking area for many years, and especially now with this blockchain, we have been involved in different projects. So we are quite looking forward to the discussion today.
Okay, so for this session, we would have about 30 minutes, and I'll be asking a few key questions, and I'll leave the last 5 minutes for the audience to ask the questions. So I guess I'll start with you, Mr. Shibata. What is our blockchain technology? Is it the same as the plain old database?
Right. That's a very big question to answer. But basically, what blockchain means to financial service is that in the past, if we are to create the financial infrastructure to process a transaction, we need to build a huge data center. And everybody needs to connect to this data center as a centralized system. But the blockchain built behind Bitcoin would enable people to share information, share data with network access. So we do not need to build a centralized system. So decentralized feature can be often described as a distributed ledger, but this blockchain technology has become a center of attention because it would have a big potential to change the infrastructure of the financial services.
Thank you. So, Mr. Abhijat, so what are the key blockchain use cases?
Actually, there are several use cases on the blockchain. And I would say I have listened to the session before that Kun Top actually has spoken about the Bitcoin. But I would say blockchain is much larger than Bitcoin only because like in IBM, we actually have been assisting lots of enterprise customers, including Krung Si Bank and also some other customers in many other areas as well. So the use case, it can cover within financial services, within government, and also within the manufacturing and also other business as well. Maybe I'll go in the detail later on, but there are several use cases that we can cover.
Can you give us a few more examples of the blockchain use cases?
Sure. So in terms of use cases that we look at, you really want to think about what is ripe for things that are trust-based transactions or interactions, value-based. So not only do I want to exchange value, so I need it to be on top of trust. So for a banking perspective, if maybe we focus in on that, we look at everything from trade finance, payment settlements. If you're thinking about the currency itself, you're thinking about how do I record that? We think of blockchain as a ledger. So actually, I'm just thinking there's so many different use cases, and really you just want to make sure that it is appropriate to the business objective, because I think one of the things that maybe we can explore is there are also alternates for using blockchain, and you also want to make sure that it's the right technology for the use case. So again, looking at particularly right now, one of the areas of KYC, where you record client information, account opening procedures, things that are data-based transactional reference data sets are also places that we look quite a bit to think about blockchain as an enabler.
I see. So do you guys see blockchain as a threat to banking's operation?
Maybe I can start. So in one sense, if we look at the particular application like Bitcoin, which does not have any issuers, so it may create certain threat to a fiat currency. But now we are observing that Bitcoin has created the mechanism to exchange their value to existing currency. And there are already some market mechanism involved. So I think Bitcoin can be a part of a payment mechanism, or in some way people would invest or speculate in Bitcoin, but it has become another financial instrument. And in that sense, we, as a financial institution, would feel that it's not strictly a threat, but it is a new way to think about the creative financial transaction. And also, if we are to look at the blockchain technology, I think it would have a big potential to replace the existing infrastructure. And I think that may not be a major threat to us. So we still have to wait for a while to solve some of the technical problems that we can use blockchain technology in existing transaction environment. But the technology is improving very rapidly. So we would see the day that we use blockchain technology in daily life very soon.
Okay, what about your view, Savitri? Do you think it is a threat to the banking's operation?
So I think there's definitely areas that you want to be concerned about and you want to think about a bit more. When you're thinking from a bank's perspective, you're looking at contracting with others, you're looking at transacting, and then you're looking at settlement, in essence. These are sort of core of what you're doing in a banking environment. And blockchain has repercussions in all three of those areas that are quite large. Still really unexplored to a certain extent, still being developed. I think in the last talk we heard a little bit about blockchain being, it's a foundational technology, so it's really in its early sort of latency stage. But from a banking perspective, you want to partner with the technology, you want to understand it, and help control and shape it. So I do think that the potential for it to really kind of take banking operations head on is strong. But that's also the use case to your question before of where you might want to think about using it. So anything that has multiple parties, that's a use case. When you're needing to kind of record and transact and then settle, which takes, sounds really simple, but anyone who's actually had to settle or receive money knows that it's usually a multiple day situation. And when you're working in a bank, there's often tens of thousands of people who are making these sort of simple things happen. So I think, for sure, blockchain has really great potential to impact financial services and banking.
Okay. Do you have something to add?
Yes, actually, in my view, I would say blockchain is more than financial services. It actually can expand to the other as well. Like in my case, let's say if I have a question, anyone here know Hyperledger? Someone know, someone do not know, right? And then let's say if I really ask you, how would you get that answer? You probably look at your phone, Google it, what is Hyperledger, right? So I think this is a question that I asked myself in the past few days. When is my last time that I went to library? I think probably 15, 20 years ago. Okay, I'm old. All right. So I thought of, right now we have internet. Internet can give us lots of information, but then the key thing is how we can trust the information that we get from internet. Normally when you go for shopping, when you go for booking of the hotel, how do you look for the hotel or you look for the stuff that you want to buy? How would you be sure that those stuffs are the things that you want to get it? How would you look for that? You look for the review. You look for something that gives the rating, right? So I would say if we have the information of the truth, where we actually can trust on the information, that we can actually get that information and then don't need to think of, okay, this is the true or this is false or something that deceives us or not. So blockchain can help in this area because let's say if I think of the case where, let's say if I have the stomachache, maybe what did you ate last night? Okay, hey Karen, the suit lady, can you check what I ate last night? So the lady may say that, okay, you ate maybe some carbonara and also some apple. And then she will say, okay, let me check for a bit. Where is the apple come from? So this apple can come from some of the contaminated farm. And if she can check for those farm and then, okay, identify that this could be the cause of the stomachache that I'm feeling right now, so would that help? And then later on, if she say that, okay, you want some kind of medicine to help? Okay, let's order some medicine for me. And okay, I'll take it in a few minutes. So she ordered to the pharmaceutical shop or somewhere else, or even hospital. And then that hospital send you the drone, giving you the pill that you can take in next 10 minutes. And then I don't need to settle about the payment, the bill at all, because everything has been settled at the back end by using blockchain. Would that be good to you? I'm not sure if I go too far, but then those are something that I'm thinking of in the future that blockchain can integrate with those IoT and also integrate with those cognitive stuff to help us to make some decision. And then we don't need to really worry about what's going to happen because we can actually trace back to what we have actually done so far in the past. So that actually is something that I'm looking for in the future as well. Yeah.
Okay, so I need everyone to maybe comment on this one. Can you tell us what your banks or organizations have been doing so far? Starting with you, Mr. Shibata.
So there's a long list of projects we're working on, but we are taking part in international level consortium called R3 and Ripple, and also Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So by taking part in these consortiums, we would like to know the industry trend and also how the large players are trying to set up a standard in order to bring blockchain into a financial world. And also in Japan, we've been working a project with the Japan Exchange Group to bring security transaction with blockchain platform. And also with other large banks, we have done proof of concept on fund transfer. And also for ourselves, we started to issue our own virtual currency called MUFG coin, which is only available within our employee community at the moment. And now starting to discuss with the financial regulator how we can bring this into our real world with the existing regulatory framework. And also in Singapore, we've worked with IBM to use blockchain for contractual arrangement, and not just making a contract, but bringing in other process. For example, if we make a contract and then IBM brings in the server to our environment and we start using the server, the chip will detect that the server has started, and then the information will send to a smart contract, and the invoice will automatically issued, and then payment process can be started. And that this kind of cycle would be future of blockchain technology. And also in US, we have participated in the proof of concept with a company called Chain.com, and also we invested in a company called Coinbase, which is the largest Bitcoin exchange player. So by doing all kinds of things, we are trying to learn how blockchain can be applied in financial services. And also, it is quite difficult for us to understand unless we actually take part in the project and develop something. And we've been learning a lot. And at this point, it is still difficult to apply blockchain for very large-scale transaction as an infrastructure. But definitely there are many applicable areas that we can start using. And once blockchain has become one standard that many people adopt, we want to make sure that we will not be left out. So I think that's a typical attitude of large global players in finance world taking part in different project, different consortium.
And what about IBM?
As IBM BSG assisting lots of customers around the world, let's say for myself, I have looked at the blockchain use case within the IBM internal database. I would say I have seen more than 100 use cases that they are working on right now. And then those use cases, as I said, cover lots of areas. And then recently, internet, there's the institute named IBV, Institutes of Business Value, which is the neutral survey company. They actually have surveyed lots of the CXO around the world. I remember that it's about 2,900 something CXO that has been surveyed. And then from the survey, they said that right now 33% of the CXO has been involving in the blockchain projects. It either actively involved or they are still exploring. So we say the trend has been increased a lot from the past 1 or 2 years. And then for the use cases, I would say I have seen lots of use cases. Let's say in the financial services, let's say on the settlement, lots of company, including lots of stock exchange. I have seen several stock exchanges, NASDAQ, LSE, ASX, and lots of the stock exchange company adopting this blockchain. So actually, the adopting of the blockchain is very near to us. And then for the fintech, I would say if the fintech can see the opportunity, can define what is the impact in the market, and define the chain, define the network that you guys want to work together. And as Shibata-san said, financial service industry, the banking can also help to support those use cases as well. And then if we can learn from this, it will help us to actually learn a lot and then can understand what exactly we can do in the future.
Secretary?
Sure. So at Deloitte, we've seen actually a lot of client interest in blockchain. So that spurred us to grow a community of over 800 practitioners globally who are focused on blockchain and cryptocurrencies as well. And so I'm a part of that sort of 800 strong community globally. So one of the things that we've been doing, a couple of things, we have a lot of industry partnerships as well. So we work with Ripple. We've gotten to know a lot of the actual providers. So we've done work with Ethereum and others. And we do a variety of things. So we've done a lot of white papers. We've actually done 30 different POCs internally, or proof of concepts. And so maybe if it's helpful, or maybe just to illustrate it and bring it alive, can talk a little bit about a few of those that we've done, particularly here in Southeast Asia. So as one good example from Southeast Asia would be we work with the Monetary Authority of Singapore to because really go through one of their first proof of concepts and go from proof of concept into pilot, actually. And I would say that's one of the bigger trends in the industry is a lot of banks have been, we call 2016 sort of the year of proof of concept. And now what we're looking forward and seeing in 2017 is that people are, they've kind of done it internally. They've done this sort of private blockchain, if we're familiar with that. And now people kind of want to test it as Rails and see what can I do outside of my own walls, safe walls of where, my bank or my institution. So we've seen a lot of people actually moving to try to have these sort of closed systems or a little semi-public. So getting closer to what you think about as Bitcoin that runs on that kind of a blockchain. So we worked with the MAS on doing a pilot. It was across several banks, so they opened it up, and they tokenized the Singapore dollar to do interbank transfers. So maybe to give a simpler explanation of what that really looks like. If you think about when you go to a music festival or a fair and you pay $10 and you get coupons or tokens back to spend, pretty low risk because you can only, they have value where you are and they can't be used anywhere else. So in that same kind of thought process, this is what we ended up doing as the pilot and helping write a white paper on it. Around could banks exchange on blockchain value? And so what the banks would do is they'd give cash to the MAS. The MAS would do the custody of it, so they'd hold on to the money. And then they would sort of basically be able to exchange. And a lot of things came out of that, but I think the primary use case of that is to actually see where were the sticking points and where were the issues. So really encourage that everyone start to get their hands dirty and understand what the limitations are and help really develop the technology for the future. There's a lot of what we've seen in our proof of concepts.
Just to add on that, the project conducted by Monetary Authority of Singapore is called Project UBIN, U-B-I-N, and Deloitte has put up a wonderful report. So if you're interested in blockchain, I recommend you to read the report. And we also participated in the project.
So, Mr. Pichard, can you tell the audience what are the key challenges in this industry?
You mean financial industry?
The blockchain industry. What challenges have you faced so far?
Okay. I would say the first thing is we have to explain what is blockchain, because when we talk about blockchain, everyone thinks of Bitcoin. So in views of IBM, we would say that we focus a lot in terms of the private blockchain, because private blockchain is actually easier to control, to secure the network. That those are networks that we can actually really want information to be flown in. So those are the things that we want to ensure that we really can deliver this thing for the enterprise, which the enterprise may not want information to actually get out of the links. So those are the first thing. And the second thing is around infrastructure as well. Even the blockchain actually can be deployed elsewhere. But then when it comes to the enterprise case, which I've been focused a lot of in the enterprise case, we want to ensure that all those information are actually even secure, because we need some kind of infrastructure that are very secure for that. So as IBM, we actually wanted to help the customer and also FinTech in order to actually understand those blockchain, the difference between the private and also the public blockchain. So we actually provide those infrastructure on the Rumix, which is the dev test environment that actually everyone can go to Bluemix right now and then can actually apply for the services, which is free, like can test and try right away. So those are the challenges that the developers and the FinTech might face in the beginning, where you don't know how to actually deploy those blockchain. So those are the first place that the FinTech can actually take that challenge to understand first what exactly the blockchain is.
Thank you. Mr. Shibata, big banks, do you think they would join hands into one single blockchain or several blockchain or completely something new?
Right. Now there are several large consortium coming out, and it may be difficult to agree upon one single platform, but now many banks are participating in the discussion how we can have a standard to utilize blockchain technology in the financial infrastructure. For example, this consortium called R3, we have seen more than 50 banks participate. And one good thing is that with the large geographical coverage, we would be able to come up with a global standard. But at the same time, if we have too many banks, it would take some time to agree upon the standards. So we may need to wait a little bit to see the standards to be established. And also, there are many discussions in the existing financial platforms, like SWIFT has been discussing how to adopt blockchain technology in their existing technology environment. And this would also create certain challenge to come up with the standard agreed upon large banks. But I think many large banks have recognized the importance of blockchain technology. We have started a major discussion here and there, and that would have a positive impact on moving blockchain adoption for the future.
Thank you. So we finally reached the last 5 minutes. I'll direct questions to the audience. So if you guys have any questions, you just raise your hand. No question? Okay, let's touch a bit on the regulation. So what are the regulatory involved in this space? Savitri?
Sure. I think in terms of regulatory environment, just discussed one example of, I think, being done really well in Singapore is the MAS's involvement and thinking about blockchain and actually creating, what we term as a regulatory sandbox, which means you kind of give open space to allow people to come and experiment and try things out. You'll see we actually have clients outside of financial services, for example, who have an easier time imagining and thinking about doing their full end-to-end business, or sort of, if you think about as we think about digital transformation, blockchain transformation, which is you run your whole business on something like a blockchain. There are serious legal, sort of regulatory hurdles that you'd have to think about getting over in order to do that. And so the regulators are, as in anything in financial services, a key partner to bring on board in order to interact that change. But in Asia, I think we've seen a lot of good signs. We've also done a project with HKMA, where they've done a pilot on trade finance, as for an example, and there's another white paper, if anyone's interested, published on that. So the regulators play, they kind of lubricate the system and they create ease with which to actually try and do things, and also a bit of an understanding. So see regulators also piloting it to understand what the risks are, what they aren't, is actually something quite different than what we've seen, for example, in the U.S. And one of the trends is that a lot of the blockchain startups are leaving the U.S. and actually going to markets like Singapore, which are considered a little bit more friendly and create this sort of innovation hub. So, a smart regulator, particularly if we take a step back from blockchain and just think about digital disruption and FinTech plays, the smart regulator who really wants to have that FinTech hub is going to be very open-minded, but also have to kind of balance the risks in the system, considering how interconnected all our markets are. So it's not an easy or envious position that our regulators are in to try to encourage and allow this, but they're definitely a key partner in making sure that it evolves in the right way.
Okay, so the last message for the audience before we leave. So what will be the future of blockchain? Is blockchain really a FinTech game changer? Starting from you, Mr. Shabata.
Yes, I believe blockchain can be a major game changer for the future. And as I mentioned before, the existing financial infrastructure may have a big impact with the adoption of blockchain. But the transaction cost is not small, and also establishing a standard would take a little bit time. And so we won't expect everything to change overnight. It will be a gradual process. And also the financial institutions are trying to identify what would be a good use case and trying with a different project. So I think it will take a little bit more, but definitely the future of blockchain is coming to change the whole financial service.
I would say, as I said earlier, I like information of truth. So absolutely, blockchain will help into this area. And then organizations like banks, I would say still exist, but it's just a matter of what is the role of banks and also the financial institute. Because blockchain will help to increase efficiency on each of the certain areas to make it faster, to make it more trustable, and also traceable, right? But then the question is, I understood that within this room there are lots of FinTech and also the people who involved in the technologies. It's better we can actually identify the impact, the use cases, which it actually can change the world. And then it's better we can define the network, define the people, define the organization that we should involve with, and then make those things happen. If you just wait for it, it's just a dream. And it will not happen anything, right? So it depends on you to make it happen.
One last
Sure.
message.
Quickly add to that. So I think the future for blockchain is really uncertain. So I can't be tasked with that. But what I do think is happening is that we're really in an infancy stage, and we're going to see waves of change. So as soon as we can get, we talked a little bit about having common rails. If we can get some consistency, particularly for transactions in the banking world, and also, I mean, some of the really interesting things were people creating their own currencies and their own closed networks, but also being able to have our existing financial institutions plug into those. And so you have this wider ecosystem play. I think that is the future of where we're going, and I think the horizons that come after that inevitably, that we typically see with this kind of fundamental technology change, is going to be really exciting, really interesting, really different, and require a big mental shift from how we're doing things today. So that's what I do expect to see in the next 10, 15, 20-year horizon.
So guys, that's it for this session. Thank you for coming in and give us some insights. Can you join me and give a round of applause for the audience? And
so it's an honor to having all of you here, Mr. Makoto Shibata, Mr. Apichat Arun Kunarak, Mr. Savitri Bishnot, and also our talented moderator, Mr. Jirayut.